Hello and welcome. I wanted to talk about this bitch. Uh, this is my pocket knife, and I think it's kind of cool. It was kind of an accident, and it started out being a 4-finger groove, like 5-inch fighter kind of thing, and some shit went wrong, and the blade got small, and I turned it into this profile eventually because I like this knife, the Buck 110, and I wanted a custom pocket fixed blade. Let's see if we can get up near the camera version of that knife. And once I'd fucked this up, I thought this would be a cool use for it, so I started kind of turning into that. And I cut off a finger groove because the handle was longer than the blade, and I thought that was a bad look. And now this thing sits like this. So if you go to like stab with it, you don't need a guard. It's kind of like a Scottish dirk or something like that. It like cups into your palm. I think that's pretty badass. And like as a fighting knife, tiny knives are bad, but this is kind of like a fighting puukko. You know what a puukko is. This is not Scandinavian ground, this is convex ground, which is better in my opinion. This thing, the grind on it reminds me of a sword blade. I think that's pretty slick. And to match the 110, I went with walnut because I had a board of walnut that was free. So that's just like a walnut board that came off a barn or some shit. And then the pins are 1/4-inch brass rod. And I think it does a pretty good approximation. And I don't know, I really like this knife. I always really liked this knife because this was my grandfather's knife. This one in particular was his, and you'll notice if I pull out mine, this is my modernized one, we'll get to it in a second. The blade on my grandfather's is quite a bit smaller. If I can fucking figure out how cameras work here. First off, it's been broken and repaired, and then he sharpened it a lot after that. And I don't know, he carried this knife his whole fucking life. I think that's pretty dope. This one is a Buck 110 Light. If you look those up, you'll see what the handle originally looked like. I took this one and did this on a what's it called, spindle sander in about 5 minutes or less. And if you go careful around the metal pivot points, and I guess that's a pivot point too, you can do this. I had to be very careful on those because there's not much holding that together in the first place. So like if you'll notice, there's like a plan to attack this thing. And this one I just kind of did the same thing. I just hit it lightly on the back and then kind of went around it. And if you do that on the metal parts, you can actually do this. And it looks really good, and it makes the traction good. And like honestly, I would like Buck to make a factory version of this knife. Even in micarta or something like that. Like, to be honest, Buck, hire me. Please, I love your knives. Who else is carrying around a fucking homemade shank that's a copy of a fucking Buck 110 that their grandfather carried? Like, let me come design knives for you. You know, I don't know if they'll see this or not, but like, for serious. I really like this thing because, one second. Damn it. I'm just gonna keep going. I really like this thing because, first off, you think, oh, 3-finger handle, that's gonna be uncomfortable. It's fine, you don't miss it at all. And for stabbing, this is a really, really safe handle. The blade being like a convex ground puukko with a Buck 110 blade shape, you can get a lot of shit done with it. It's a cutting motherfucker. And I really like convex grinds. Everyone likes to talk about, you know, this knife or that knife or this grind or that grind. Convex grinds go through things. They don't go into things and get stuck. This kind of a grind is great for most tasks. But when you like go to cut through a roll of carpet or a human being or something like that with this knife, it goes in until it hits this wide point and then it stops. This one just keeps going. Okay, and like, that's not everybody's thing, but I find that this kind of a grind is good for woods tasks, and it being better at cutting wood makes it better at cutting people. And like, this is where I try to be with all of my knives. I don't make anything that's like meat only. I've made a couple things like that, and if I sell you something and say it's meat only, I mean it. You'll fuck up the knife using it on other shit. And that's usually because I made the edge really, really, really scary thin and sharp, and it will fuck people up. But it is, you know, you're going to have to send it in for repairs after actually using it on a human being, probably. If you hit bone with that thing. Like, I don't like making stuff that way. I don't like single-use weapons, although they are vicious and, like, they're fun. It's a fun thing to have a knife so sharp that you could, like, you know, peel shit with it, you know, effortlessly and stuff. And that's the kind of stuff that you can do when you do that. And, like, it's like making a battle axe sharpened like a kitchen knife. It's terrifying. You know, it may only work once or twice, but it's terrifying. And the thing I like about this is basically it looks like a little bitty Bowie knife. And I like Bowie knives. And I also really like Scottish dirks. And I have a theory, basically, that the Bowie knife is an evolution of the Scottish dirk. If you look at early Bowie knives, they have a brass thing on the back of them here. The other place that you see that a lot is Scottish dirks. I think the first Bowie knives in America were made by Scottish immigrants, more than likely. And, like, it makes sense. We're big knife people. And I have nothing to prove this other than my own supposition of just the design and what the knives are for. Because if you look at the dirks that the Highlanders carried, they're, you know, a short sword, which the original Bowie knife was a short sword. And the Highlanders used them as a utility short sword. They use them for camp tasks and fighting. And to me, that's exactly what the Bowie knife was to the mountain men and shit like that. So this thing is very dirk-like in that it is one-sided and meant for stabbing, and it has a tiny handle, but it's kind of miniaturized and in a Bowie style, and it's very me. This knife is very much me, and it is an accident, and I love it. I love happy accidents. This knife is my Bob Ross moment, I guess. And I like finger grooves, and the reason I like finger grooves is because they look cool. It's the only reason. That they really, if anything, they hurt most knives' comfort factor. For a knife like this really works. Especially with only 3 of them, it locks this thing in a way that it just, you know, if you just want a fixed blade pocket knife, something like this will work. I was looking at getting a Tops Puko because I thought it was cool, and as I started thinking about it, I started thinking, well, why would I buy that if I own this? And I'm not going to buy that knife. I'm just going to keep carrying this one. And that's how I am with a lot of shit that I see. I keep seeing, you know, new this and new that and new whatever, and like, honestly, I like my homemade one, or I like this cheap one that I modified, or my grandfather's. Like, this is the kind of shit that I like in knives. I'm not really a big fancy knife person, I guess. Like, I have that expensive Benchmade, and I've owned a bunch of expensive and fancy knives. I had a couple of $300 a piece customs that I just had come through my hands. Like, I took them in on trade and then sold them off within a couple of weeks. That's just how I am with a lot of shit. The stuff that endures and lasts is stuff like this that I take some time and put some effort into. And the thing that I think is cool about this one is you can deploy this thing one-handed, and that's slick. I don't really like folding knives at all. Ergo, this is my pocket knife. Like, I have many pocket knives, but this is one that I carry a lot. I have one that has my first logo on it that I carry a lot too. I have this thing. I have that Benchmade. You know, I'll do a video eventually on a pocket knife collection. I want to get a couple of things first and find a couple of things that I've lost. This is the kind of stuff that really interests me, and I really want to do more videos on this kind of a thing. And if you could share this video, like and subscribe, and hit up my Patreon. I'm kind of small right now, and we're going to be doing Q&A videos, and there's a Discord, and we'll see what else. I'm going to keep adding things. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a nice day.